Okay, so we have finished the static site. And if we take a look at what we have, you're not going to be able to see the entire site because my window is not that big. But if I drag the left wall to the right, it gets smaller. But you can see that scroll bars show up, and the person has to do this in order to be able to see our site. So what we want to do is we want to make this, first we'll make it flexible, and that is the components on here will shrink and move around whenever we are making the window smaller. And then we'll make it responsive, meaning that when it hits certain breakpoints, when things break, and pretty much the thing that's going to break is our our navigation up here. The rest of it will just move things around. So that's where we are right now. So the first thing we're going to do is go back to Sublime Text. We have our index page and our styles.css. Now it's very important that you don't just start monkeying around with this to try to fix it. Once it's built, all right, it's built, everything's fine. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do a file and save as for our index page. Whoops. Oh. All right, so I'm going to do file, save as, and so there is my flexible. I'm going to save this as index underscore static. Okay, at this point my website works. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to my style sheet, and I'm going to change this to underscore static. Alright, so that is, now I'm going to go ahead into my style sheet, and I'm going to save that. I'm going to do a file, save as, and again, I'm just like I did with the index, I'm going to change this to styles underscore static. Alright, so now we have that done. Now I can go ahead and close these two. And then open up my index page again and open up my styles. Okay, so this is what I want to work on, but I want to have that backup. And we're going to do this again when we hit our, when we stop doing flexible. Alright, so let's take a look at what the things that we're going to have to do. One of the things is the wrapper right now is 1300 pixels. And that's going to be great on a monitor that's that big. But if the monitor is smaller, in fact, I was doing it on my desktop. My desktop has a smaller monitor than my laptop does, and it doesn't look so good. So what we're going to do is I'm going to change this from a 1300 pixels and just make it 97%, which means it's going to just leave a 1.5% on either side. And then no scroll bars. So I'm going to do File and Save. Let's do a Save All. Okay, now if I go back into my page and refresh, see I have a scroll bar down here. When I hit refresh, scroll bar is gone. Alright, so, but everything's all messed up now. You can see that there's that. These aren't too bad. They just went into 2 columns instead of 3. And this went into 2 columns instead of 3, so that's not so bad. Some of the things will wrap, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. So we won't worry about that if it's just wrapping. And then that's working. So the biggest thing right now is the head, our about section, are the two things that we have to worry about. So that's what we're going to do first is we're going to come back to our header section and fix that. So our header section right now, let's see, our figure right here is floating to the right. But what we want to do is we want to make that a certain size and have it shrink as the window shrinks. So I'm going to come in here and say that the width of this is going to be 45%. Now the 45% is 45% of whatever size the window is. So if I make this 45%, and then I have to, and I come down here, because on the other side of that is my header. That's my header image, header article. If I come down here also and change this width to 45%, That means there'll always be a 5% space in between those two objects, and those objects will shrink depending on the size of the window, or grow if that's what's going to happen. Now the other thing I have to do is change the change the image. So right now the image fits fine, but when the figure gets smaller, we want the image to get smaller too. So in order to do that, we also have to specify a width. And we're going to say we want this to be 100%. Now the 100% is 100% of the 45%. So it's inside this. It's inside this figure. And when that figure is 45%, this picture is only going to be as wide as this width is. All right, so let's go back, do File, and Save All. And then I'm going to go back to our page, and I'm going to make it big. All right, so now it's nice and big. I'm going to refresh the page, and you can see, well, that picture got a little bit bigger, and this is all messed up. All right, so let's go ahead and shrink it down and see what happens. So it's not so bad. So when we shrink it down, and our breakpoint is right there when that contact wraps. All right, but this is working pretty good, except for this one piece right there. Okay, see how this floats up here? And that's because we floated the H1, but we didn't float the H2. So let's go back and do that. Where is, so we have header H1. Okay, we don't want to, we could just add H2 to this also if we wanted to all do that, but we don't want it to do that. We just want it to float. So we're going to do header H2 and say that we want this to float also, and float it to the left. Alright, so it worked before, but that's because of the way we didn't have any sizing on there. Now that we have sizing, this one right here, since it's not floating, is going to move up into the space left when the H2 shrinks. Alright, so let's go ahead and do File, Save All, and then refresh. Boom. Okay, so now these are both floating. So now it's going to be working pretty good. You can see that they'll never meet each other. Now, you notice that this trident sandwich wraps, and so does this. This one wraps kind of funny, and we don't want that. So let's go ahead and we're going to fix this also. But I don't care if this trident shop. Now, your client might, and if it does, we're going to have to shrink the text probably at the break point. So at the point at which this breaks, all right, so at this point right here, what we can do is we can start out with this being a little bit smaller so it doesn't wrap until this wraps if our client wants us to do it that way. But first, let's go ahead and see what's going on with this. So if I go in here, that problem is not in my CSS, it's in my HTML. So if we go down to, let's see, right here, you can see we have this BR tag in there. And that was so that it broke at that point. And let's not break it. And File and Save All. And then refresh. And you see now it stays nice. I'm not sure why I had the breaker point in there anyway. Okay, but if we look down, so what we're going to do is we're going to have this work fine until right about here, and then we're going to have to fix the rest with media queries. If we come down here, you can see this is all messed up, so we're going to have to fix that too. And you can see it's pushing into the bottom. So let's go ahead, and I'm at my limit for this one, so let's go ahead and see you in the next video.